Hello and welcome to our very first podcast of the year. For the month of April, we have chosen to do Crescent City, Book 1, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. This is about 800 pages long, and I've already read it. Nicholas has not. And we thought it would be a really good one to do for our first book because I already know what's going to happen in this series, so I can kindly guide him through it.
Should be an exciting adventure. Bound by blood, tempted by desire, unleashed by destiny. Half fae, half human, Bryce Quinlan loves her life. Every night is a party, and Bryce is going to savor all the pleasures Lunathian, also known as Crescent City, has to offer. But then a brutal murder shakes the very foundations of the city, and Bryce's world comes crashing down. 2 years later, Bryce still haunts the city's most notorious nightclubs, seeking only oblivion now, trying to put the past behind her. When the murderer attacks again, an infamous fallen angel, Hunt Athalar, is assigned to watch her every footstep. Bryce knows she can't forget any longer. As Bryce and Hunt fight to unravel the mystery, the threads they tug ripple through the underbelly of the city, across warring continents and down to the deepest levels of hell, where things that have been sleeping for millennia are beginning to stir. So we have the 4 houses of Midgard, as decreed in 33 VE by the Imperial Senate in the Eternal City. House of Earth and Blood, shifters, humans, witches, ordinary animals, and many other to whom Chthona calls, as well as some chosen by Luna. House of Sky and Breath, Malachim, angels, fae, elementals, sprites, and those who are blessed by Solus, along with some favored by Luna. House of Many Waters, river spirits, myrrh, water beasts, nymphs, kelpies, nox, and other watched over by Oganus. House of Flame and Shadow, Daimonaki, reapers, wraiths, vampires, draki, dragons, necromancers, and many wicked and unnamed things that even Erd herself cannot see. And there's an annotation at the bottom of the page that says, sprites were kicked out of their house as a result of their participation in the fall and are now considered lowers, though many of them refuse to accept this.
And also apologies if we are pronouncing any of these things wrong. So we are covering chapters 1 through 17 in this section, in this episode, which is about a quarter of the book.
It's 199 pages.
So what did you think so far?
I thought it was pretty good. My biggest complaint was that it's a massive info dump in the beginning. It doesn't really lend itself to easy understanding. You really have to keep track of all these people, places, things in your mind and kind of keep them relevant as you move through the first 17 chapters. They don't repeat what they are very often, so you kind of need to establish your baseline for what you need to know in this book. Other than that, the story is okay so far. In comparison to other Sarah J. Maas books, I'm not as, I guess, pulled in or captured quite yet. But again, this is an 800-page book, and I'm only 199 pages in. So that could change. But yeah, we just have to see how it goes.
I also found this book to be very confusing in the beginning. You just read it in the hope that it's all going to make sense in the end. But she is known for, the last 100 pages, certainly not the first. So, yeah. But in that massive info dump, we learned about the 4 houses. There's 3 books out currently. The only house that doesn't have a book right now is the House of Many Waters. So that's speculated to be book 4, but we don't know. Then you also learn in the first 17 chapters. I like that we're saying the first 17 as if like the next 17. But you learn about the hierarchy of Pangira, Valbara. I don't really know the difference at this point between the lands. Like there's Crescent City. Then Crescent City is also / Lunathian. Those are the same thing. And then they are in Pangira, which I think is like the giant country. And then Valbara is the continent. So you have the Asteri, who we don't really know what they are, but there's 6 of them.
Some kind of ruling body.
Yeah, there's 6 of them, but the Asteri rule over everything. I don't know. It's the very small world. Then under them are the archangels, and then we don't know how many of those there are. And then under them are also angels and Vanir, and then under them are humans, angel slaves, and the sprites, and pretty much everybody else, because there's some kind of war happening. Um, when I first read this, I wasn't sure if it was a past war or if the war was happening right now, because you have Crescent City, which is a modern day city, but then you casually have slaves, but then also the angels are slaves because there was a rebellion. I mean, there's just so much happening in this, and so many characters were introduced, and I thought it was just really hard to
In terms of
follow
the
along.
naming of things as well, it's pretty apparent to anyone who's read any Norse mythology they that Sarah J. Maas pulls a lot of terms like directly from Norse mythology to use in her book. Like Mikiska mentioned the Vanir. In Norse mythology, that's a sect of the gods. So in this book, I think they're being used as like a higher being, or basically anyone who has magical properties that isn't human. And then, like in that intro about the houses, she mentions Erd, who is also like a goddess of the well of fate. And then also, she mentioned Hell, but she spells it Hel, which is like the Norse underworld.
Mm.
So just some key things to look out for. A lot of the naming conventions seem to have a mythological framing.
Yeah, and I mean, her other books she's influenced, she's said, through different points of mythology. She really likes Greek mythology, Norse mythology. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. Um, but yeah, so then in again, the first 17 chapters, we meet the main players, and I mean, there's just so many people that you meet. So we meet Bryce Quinlan. She is half human, half fae, and it isn't until towards the end of the section that you learn her father is
The Autumn King.
Autumn King, and her mother is human, but she was raised by her mother and her mother's human husband, Randall. And they live outside of Crescent City in some town. So I was very confused to see, like, I thought that everywhere outside of Crescent City and the rest of Pangura or Panjura was in a war, but apparently that's not the case.
Yeah, the relationship between Bryce and her parents and her actual parents, biological, I guess her parents that aren't biological, the relationship isn't
We mean her
abundantly
parents
clear.
that aren't biological. It's
Like,
just Randall.
yeah, I didn't follow that part very well. I couldn't place who was who. So
Mm. So you meet Bryce, and then you meet her boss, and her boss is, well, I've been saying Jasiba, but apparently it's Jessiba, who is some kind of witchy person, and she's part of the House of Flame and Shadow. So you don't really know too much about her other than that she's
some kind of
some kind
sorceress.
of sketchy lady. And she gifts, like, she really clearly cares for Bryce in some fashion because she gives her this magic amulet, the Arcasian amulet, which I just feel like Miss Sarah J would never mention something like that for it not to be a big deal later on. So we'll see. But that helps protect her against the magical elements of all the antiquities that she's dealing with, apparently.
Her boss has her hunting for some weird stuff.
Yeah. Then we also meet Fury and Juniper, who are Bryce's best friends, along with Danica. Fury, we don't know what she is. She's
She's
not
some
a,
kind of assassin, I think,
yeah,
maybe.
but we don't know if she's like a human. We don't know what she is. Juniper is a fawn, right?
Yeah.
Who does ballet. And then we have Danica Fenrir, who is a wolf shifter, and she's also the granddaughter of the prime of the Valbaran wolves. Like, there's so many titles and people. Like, it's so confusing. And she's also the leader of, I say the devil dogs, but that's not true. It's the pack of devils. And then we also so we meet Danica and the pack, and then we meet Ethan, who is the brother of Connor. And then, long story short, they're all dead now.
A lot of people, hard to keep track of.
Danica and the pack of devils are dead. Ethan is not dead. And pretty much the whole book is them figuring out who this murderer is.
Although Bryce is also a suspect the whole time, which is weird.
Well, the way it's broken up is chapter 5, they all die, and then the next chapter is like 2 years later.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, the vampire dies, and she was dealing with him in a deal for work. And then all of a sudden, now she's an even bigger suspect in the murder of Danica. I don't know. But we also meet Lahaba, the fire sprite, who works for Jezebel. She protects all the books. She is the cutest. Then we meet Micah, who is the archangel of Crescent City, so he's also the governor. And under him works Hunt Athalar and Isaiah Tiberian, and they are both slaves, and they also bear the rebel mark, which suppresses their power. And Hunt has lightning magic, and then Isaiah apparently has wind magic. And I didn't know that until just when I was researching for this book, because I'm coming back to it, and I was like, well, he has powers the whole time.
And to clarify too, they're fallen angels that were part of a rebellion, and their punishment is serving under Micah.
Yeah, but Micah has apparently been so kind to Hunt and has offered him a deal where he can earn his freedom by killing people for Micah on the side, and for each life that he takes is one repaid for the life he took during the rebellion. And so during this investigation, he says, if you solve the murder of this girl Danica and the wolves, I'm going to cut down your debt all the way to 10. And he was at like 2,200
Yeah, it was
or
in the
something.
thousands, and he took it all the way down to 10 for this deal. I thought that was a suspicious point to make. Why is this investigation so important to him?
After 2 years, though, that's what kills me.
Yeah.
And so then we also meet, well, we don't meet her. I think she's just mentioned, but Hypaxia, who is going to be the witch queen, the new witch queen. Someone I heard say Hypatia.
Hypaxia.
I think
Hypatia. I'm going to go with
I
Hypaxia.
think it's Hypaxia. We also meet Rune Dannon, who is the crown prince of the Valbaran Fae / son of the Autumn King / half brother of Bryce. So he's got a lot of titles going on there. But his mother is some woman from Avalon, which we don't really know anything about. That's just some island filled with mist up in where? The north?
If you're confused, we're confused as well.
I don't know. I just wish I was to say I wish I knew more, but I feel like I've already gotten so much at this point. And then Rune's two buddies are Flynn and Declan. I for the longest time thought they were the same person. I thought his name was Flynn Declan. Wrong. It's two people. And then we learn about Philip Briggs, who is getting out of prison, and he was a leader in the human rebellion because apparently the war that's going on is between the Vanir and the humans.
Right.
But then there's humans that just casually live in Crescent City, so it's just very. I think there's humans that are rebelling, and then there's humans that support it. I don't really know.
And the war is happening in Pangera.
Yeah,
which we don't know where it is.
Which we think Pangera is like the country on the continent of Valbara.
The map only indicates what's within
Crescent City.
So there's a lot left to the imagination.
And then we also learn about Sandriel and Shahar. And so Sandriel is an archangel, and Shahar is her twin sister who rebelled against her because she believed that she killed their parents. But Shahar is also Hunt Athalar. They were lovers, and he rebelled with her. Sandriel believed that it was Hunt who led her to that. But Shahar died, and Hunt is now a slave.
Yep.
And so that's all the people that we meet for the most part. So the key points, we got Danica and the Pack of Devils were killed in chapter 5 on a night when Bryce and Fury, they take drugs and they go clubbing. Bryce then comes home to find the bloodbath of the murders. And in the moment, homegirl Bryce chases a potential murderer into the alley, right? Isn't that what she does?
Yeah, it looked like like the description in the book, it was like some kind of humanoid looking.
Like a beast of some kind.
Demon or beast, yeah.
But then she ends up saving somebody that was attacked by that thing.
Yeah, there was an angel in the alleyway.
In the alley, yeah.
Who was bleeding out, and she basically saved his life as this creature was fleeing.
But then she is taken into custody as some sort of suspect, and they are interrogating her, and
that's when we meet Isaiah and Hunt,
who are police. So not only are they slaves, but they are also some sort of detective. Like, I think all the angels are cops in a sense.
A part of the 33rd
Legion, because there's so many legions. There's like an 18th Legion and a 33rd Legion, but then you also have the auxiliaries, which you have like, because the Pack of Devils are the Ox, the wolf Ox, and then Rune Dannon is the head of the Valbaran Fae auxiliary, But then we have legions. There's so many.
Long story short, break out your Excel sheet and take notes and keep track of everything because it's not clear who is what.
Yeah, there's just so many things going on. So then Danica dies. So Danica's dead. Bryce then goes to the Bone Quarter to meet some mystery person creature. We have no idea for what, and we don't know what happened there, but I thought that was mysterious. Okay, so that skips 2 years ahead. Bryce is sober, but is still pretending to be a party girl. She still works for the antiquity shop. But now she's doing more and more sketchy things, probably because they have a more trusting relationship. I mean, now at this point, it's been years that she's been working there. And then her client he's a vampire, right? The guy that dies after she meets with him in the club.
Oh yeah,
He's a
yeah. He
vampire.
was a vampire.
Yeah, so this guy dies, this client dies in the meat quarter. Isn't it what it's called?
The meat market.
The meat market. Yeah. He dies. And that is what reignites this whole investigation. We don't know who he killed him.
Right.
And he was a really big player.
And the governor of
In the
Crescent
government,
City, Micah, is the one who put Bryce Quinlan on the case.
Yeah. So like the freaking governor is like, hey, 20-year-old party girl, you want to go solve the murder of your best friend after all these years, and then also maybe side hustle and try and solve this crime of this vampire guy? I just think that was weird. Like, after 2 years, you and the most elite detectives and angels and all the auxiliary, like, nobody could solve this crime.
But she's also an active suspect in the case.
Suspect. So I don't know. I just thought it was so weird. And then Hunt Athelar, one of the angels, is assigned to guard her because they think that maybe the killer's going to come back for her, but she's also suspected of being the killer. So I don't know what they were thinking there. But no, don't, because Hunt is a demon hunter.
Yes, he's the Umbra Mortis, or the
Yes.
Angel of Death.
So detective by day, and then
Demon Slayer
Umbra Mortis by night / slave. So there's just everyone is, I wouldn't call them dynamic characters, but they're certainly they all have a lot going on, it looks like. And that's really all that happens I say all that happens. Like, that's a lot in the first 17 chapters. So my biggest questions are like, why is the governor of the city literally asking a 20-year-old party girl to solve one of the biggest crimes in history? Because Danica, again, was looked at as she was going to take over for her grandfather, who was the prime of the wolves, like the leader of the wolves.
She was supposed to be a big deal and probably the most powerful of...
Like the most powerful wolf.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
then her and her whole group are just suddenly killed. Such skilled warriors.
So many of them, like some, like obviously, like, but they think it was the demon, so it was like...
But who would have the motive to kill?
Right, why kill them? That's the question, right? Why kill them? Who killed them? What killed them? We just don't know. My suspicion is that it was Danica's mom, Sabine, because she has the most to gain, I think, from Danica's death and from the death of that group, because it was suspected that Danica would surpass her mother and take over as the leader of the wolves.
The prime apparent.
As the prime, yeah. Because Sabine was currently the prime parent.
No, Danica's grandfather was the prime apparent.
He is the prime.
Yes. And the sword got passed off to her instead of the mother.
Yeah, so the mother.
There's a sword for their people, their group.
It's not magic. What is it called, though?
I don't remember the name of the sword.
What's the name of the sword?
But there's a sword for the wolves, but in the same breath, Rune Danica
carries the star sword.
He gets in his ordeal. There's like all these coming of age things that happen in this book for the Fae in particular, associated with what is called the drop, which is essentially their decision to leap into their immortal life. They have to go to like a government center to take this drop. This drop is like what establishes the beginning of their immortal life. And if they don't do that, then they age like a normal human being and could die at some point in time.
And the drop doesn't mean that they live eternal, like forever, but their life is expanded, and they all go through it.
And is that specific to the Fae?
No.
Okay.
Because Danica and Bryce were going to do it together. It's for any Vanir who wants to harness their magic.
Right. They call that what? First light?
Well, first light is what's generated when you do the drop.
Right.
So you go to the government center, you do the drop. You have 6 minutes, I think it is, to go as far deep into whatever, and then
The depth of their power.
yeah, and then you grab that and you come back and you have to have an anchor. And Danica and Bryce were going to be each other's anchors, but then obviously Danica's dead. And when you do the drop, you get extended life because they say that the Fae can live thousands of years, but they will die eventually.
Also to note, all the Fae in this book seem incredibly weak compared to the Fae and
They say that, don't
some of
they?
her
How weak
other.
they are.
Yeah, they're not powerful, and like trying to tap into any bit of their magic essentially taxes them completely.
Yeah, it's very suspicious. But like the first light, I think that's a weird concept. So you go because they're also weak, right? And you go to the drop, and then you get the most powerful magic you can for yourself, and then the government essentially like sucks up your first light, which I don't know if that's something they could take in anyway, but they take your first light, and then that's what they use to like
Power the city.
for their cars and their cell phones. And for the longest time, I could not get over at that. And as I was reading and reading, and then at some point at the end of the book, this isn't a spoiler, at the end of the book, Bryce like gets in a car, and my brain could not comprehend that because they're like, she gets in the car, and I'm like, what do you mean, what car?
Yeah, I have to continuously remind myself that this entire story is taking place in like
City.
a modern setting. It's not like some of Sarah J's other novels where it's like medieval.
Medieval.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just yeah, okay. But so then Danica, we are bouncing all over the place, which is fine. So Danica's dead. And then, literally right after she dies, Fury disappears, and you think she killed
So
Danica.
we know that Fury is like some dangerous assassin, and then I think that it's strange that she completely disappears right after the murder, doesn't have hardly any contact with Bryce whatsoever, and because she tends to be what we think is a hired assassin, I think it's highly possible that while she may not be the person to have chosen that Danica and her Packards die, I think she may have been responsible at least for the killing. Again, that's just a
But why?
guess.
Why do you think her? Because she went missing
Because she's
after.
such a skilled assassin, who else would be capable
Hmm.
of doing that?
And I
But then again,
guess
but wait a minute, we also see that that Bryce is chasing a demon. So if there's a demon
maybe,
doing the killing,
maybe she could turn into the demon though.
maybe she could. I don't know if Fury's involved or not, but that's one of my theories.
I mean, I guess it could. Like they were clearly taken by surprise, right? And nobody would question if Fury came in. But also, I don't think anyone would question if Sabine came in either.
Hard to say at this point.
But those are our predictions. I think it was Sabine the mother, and you think it was Fury. So we'll see. But one question I had was, who is Danica's father? Because she is supposedly more powerful than her mother, which means surely that her father is a powerful person. But her father's identity, I don't know if it's kept a secret or if she knows and has never told anybody. But I'm really curious as to who he is, and maybe that could play a part into why she was killed.
Yeah, I don't recall them mentioning her father at all in the story, but if she is so much more powerful than her mother, then it leads you to believe that her father was also a powerful figure.
Yeah.
So,
Like, who could it be?
who could it be?
Yeah. And then, like, what are the Asteri? I thought for the longest time in, like, reading this first section that they were also angels.
I have no idea who they are. They just seem like some higher ruling body of magical being.
Yeah, I thought they were angels because the angels were, like, the highest you could go, but, you know, I don't know.
I thought the archangels.
Well, the archangels. I thought that's what the Asteri were, but
Because
I
there's
don't think so.
archangels and angels. They make a distinction.
Yeah, the archangels, and I don't know if there's a power difference in the archangels or if it's just because they are
I
leaders.
don't know, but there's definitely like a class system in Crescent City.
Yeah.
Because, like you saw in the very beginning when they're talking about the five houses, they delegated the sprites down to the level of lower beings.
Which I don't understand that either, right? Okay, so the sprites sided with the rebels during the First War, but they're eternally slaves and they're considered nothing. And I just don't understand why they got that versus the angels who are only the living angels are slaves. I don't think their offspring are also slaves.
Right, and if they have powers as well, and they're still being designated as lower beings. It makes me think that the humans in this universe are treated like complete
Well,
garbage.
aren't the humans above the sprites?
I don't know. I don't think it said.
Or well, let's reference the little book. Humans are in the house of earth and blood. And then it like the sprites aren't even in a house.
Okay, so
They're
they're
kicked out
lower.
of their house as a result of their participation in the fall. That's what they call it. And are now considered lowers. So they're below humans.
That's pretty wild.
And Lahaba, the cute little fire sprite who just sits on a candle and watches TV all day, like she's considered a lower. She's my favorite character of this whole book. She's just so cute. And then another question I had was, what is the Northern Rift? Because they say that the Fae came from the Northern Rift. Well, where did they come from?
Right.
Why did they come here? Where is this Northern Rift? Is this in Pangaea as well? Like, what
There's
is this?
no details given as to when that happened, where it happened. There's so much missing from the geographical makeup of where things are happening in this book.
Yeah, it's a weird map because in her other books, you have a map of, I
The
mean,
whole
the
world.
whole world, like, well, in the whole world that we learn of, right? The continent, but I get that it's called Crescent City, but I don't think, I wish I knew or had a map that covered everything because they're referencing things outside of here.
Yeah.
I mean, at least in Throne of Glass, they're like, oh, the southern continent. Okay, well, we can see the southern continent
Right. They pointed
down
to it
there.
on the
Like,
map.
okay, at least I have an idea of what I'm looking at. Um, so I just think that's really confusing. And are only the Fae the ones who came from the Northern Rift? Is there a Southern Rift?
Right. And
Like,
who opened the rift?
who opened the rift? Where did they come from?
Right.
Like, is it open now? Is it just a story? Like, there's so many questions I have about the Northern Rift. And then we have the Autumn King. So talking about the Fae coming from the Northern Rift.
Right.
The Autumn King gives me the High Lord of Autumn vibes in
From
ACOTAR
Akatar.
because they're literally described as redheads. They both have like angry little personalities, and then they also have the ability of fire.
But he's only considered a council member, I think was what it's called. He's like one of 7 that control districts in Crescent City.
Yeah,
So he's
so
the district leader of 5 Roses.
of the Fae.
Right, of the
But he's the king of autumn. But then I'm like, are there other kings? Which we learn there are other kings of the Fae.
right.
But are there other seasons? Like, why is he the autumn king? That alone, I just felt like was so interesting because we have the autumn court in ACOTAR. Like, why isn't he just the king of the Valbarn Fae? Why is he the autumn king? That
And I
little
also thought it
detail
was also
stuck out to
interesting
me.
that he is like fully obsessed with some kind of like science experiments
Yeah,
or something that he's like actively working on. Anytime there's a scene
constantly
where
researching,
his son Rune comes into his office, like he's actively trying to map all of these like stellar,
like the stars, right?
yeah, these stellar astrological happenings, but his purpose for doing that is not clear at all. Like he has a reason for it and he's devoted to doing it, but we don't know why.
And he's just like an interesting guy because he is a Valbaran Fae. But then, so Rune's mom, right, is from Avalon, but she and the king are not married. She's
Right, she's
not
like
the
a
queen.
concubine.
She was chosen for her bloodline to have Rune, but Rune has like no magic.
Right, and
But he has the Star Sword, which he got from a cave in Avalon.
the Autumn King is basically told Rune during one of their encounters that it's time for him to establish an heir and find
Mm-hmm.
a wife, but we find out that his ordeal when he visits the Oracle,
Oh yeah,
the
yeah,
Oracle told him that he will be the last of his line.
yeah. That the royal bloodline will end with him.
Right.
But then, okay, so then talking about the Oracle tells him that the bloodline will end with you. So everyone goes to the Oracle when they're like 13 or so years old.
But the Autumn King doesn't know what the Oracle actually told Rune because he lied to his father about it.
Yeah, so Rune lies about it. And then Bryce goes when she's young because she used to have a relationship with Rune and the Autumn King. But
Right.
then she goes to the Oracle. The Oracle tells her something. She leaves crying. And then the relationship pretty much fizzles out. And now they don't speak. She has no relationship with them.
And we don't know what the Oracle told her.
Yeah, so I'm really curious as to what they told her because I think so. But you have to think, okay, so in my mind, the Oracle tells Rune the royal bloodline went with you. Okay, but Bryce is also part of that royal bloodline.
Right.
Why would she leave crying? Like maybe, like I always thought that they would tell her that she dies or something, or that one of them is going to die.
Yeah, I'm not
That's
sure.
the assumption, right? Like, if how else would the royal bloodline end with him? He either dies or he
Or he
doesn't
just
have
doesn't have
children.
children, yeah.
But that also means that she doesn't have children, or she dies too, because she's a royal bloodline as well.
She's not considered a royal, though, by the Autumn King.
But she's like the royal
I
bloodline
think it's important to point out that the Autumn King tries to keep Bryce
secret.
almost hidden, like a secret, she was like a love child that wasn't supposed to be talked about. And anytime anything important happens in the city, he basically goes to send a message to Bryce that she needs to like keep her shit under wraps so that she's not causing a ruckus when these important people are in town. That way that she doesn't.
Well, the important people that are in town you're talking about is because Sandriel, the archangel, is coming to Crescent City, and everyone's all in an uproar about it. But going back, see, you're getting ahead of me. Everyone thinks that Rune Dannon is Bryce's cousin, and in my mind, I'm like, okay, everyone knows that Rune is the son of the Autumn King. Okay, as like the royal family, as the head of the Valbaran Fae. Then you got Bryce. You're calling her your cousin. There's only so many ways Homegirl could even be a cousin. Like, surely everyone is looking at her and thinking, wait, that's your cousin? Wait, who's your uncle or your aunt? You know what I mean? Like, there's only so many ways she could even be a cousin, and nobody thinks it's suspicious,
But they're siblings.
but they're actually in real life siblings. But nobody questions the cousin thing.
Right.
Like, I get that they don't look anything alike, because Bryce has red hair. I mean,
Same parents,
I-
though, yeah? Mother and
no, no,
father?
no, no, no. Bryce is half human.
I can't remember.
Randall is the
That's
stepfather. And what is Bryce's mom's name?
See, that's where I was getting mixed up. I
No,
thought
no,
she
no,
was also
no.
born from that concubine.
No. Oh my God, Nicholas. How are we 200 pages and you don't know this? No. Okay, so we have the Autumn King, and his chosen mother was Rune's mom from Avalon. To That was the chosen bloodline to make Rune, because he is of both bloodlines. He's now the heir to the throne of the Valbaran Fae. Then the Autumn King, though, he supposedly in love with Ember Quinlan, who is a human. They have a daughter, Bryce. Bryce and Rune are half siblings
Okay. Through the father.
through the father.
Yeah, this book, there's so much happening that you will miss key components at some point. It's inevitable. I mean, it's literally the biggest info dump I've read. I mean, really in any book that's not like super duper high fantasy.
Right. And so that's why I always was like, why does no one question the cousin relationship? Because there's only so many ways you could even be a cousin. And Bryce, supposedly, like, she's got the red hair and everything. Like, she looks like the Autumn King, let's be honest. Rune has black hair, right? He's described as very dark features, which I said was giving very Night Court. But like this parallels I thought was interesting, but I think she has a type.
Yeah.
So I think that's just where that comes from. But I just don't understand how nobody would question the cousin thing in the royal family. That makes no sense to me. But then, speaking of Ember, Bryce's mom, so she lives in a town outside of Crescent City, and I thought there was a big war going on, but I think the war is much farther away.
Yeah.
And the humans, there's human slave. Well, there's slaves of all races here, which I didn't understand in the beginning. I thought that only the angels and like the sprites were slaves.
Did we discuss how we thought, or how rather Bryce thought that Philip Briggs, the human prisoner, was initially responsible for Danica and the Wolfpack's death because he's like some kind of terrorist instigator?
He was the leader of like these human rebels, and they're rebelling against the government.
The government,
But there's only humans rebelling, because the angels did rebel, right? In what they call the fall. But then there was nothing else, and now the humans are rebelling. And yeah, so I just thought it was weird that Bryce's human parents live casually in a town outside of Crescent City, but I guess there's no war there, or humans aren't as bad there or something. I don't know. Yeah, and then we already talked about the magical necklace that
right?
Bryce was given. I think that's going to be important later. That's what I thought when I read this, because again, Miss Sarah J just doesn't mention, like, I have read all of her books, and I have learned, like, if she says something about one tiny little thing, you better believe you're going to see that again.
No spoilers, but she does like her magical necklaces, and we'll leave it at that for any other Sarah J. Massiverse fans and
It just
book
was
readers.
giving,
Necklaces are
a certain
important.
vibe.
Necklaces are
She
important.
likes her jewels. And then I also was like, what are the seven gates? Are they important? because they have these gates and they're just kind of for decoration, and there's that they separate the different districts in Crescent City. But I thought
They were mentioned so
they were
minimally that I didn't even remember them until you brought them up.
no, no, no. They're not meant like even on the map, there's all these gates. And I mean Crescent City's map looks really small to me. Like, I don't know, the shape of it, it's a circle. It's just the gates.
Did they say what the climate of Crescent City
I
was?
don't think
Is
so.
it like
I don't
desert,
I don't think so. I think it's just I imagine Crescent
like
City.
Barcelona?
No, like New York City.
Oh, okay.
Like a really modern, or maybe like Tokyo or something. Like I imagine as a super modern, super advanced city. That's in my mind what it looks like
Right. Interesting.
with all climates. They don't mention a lot of weather.
No, they don't. I think the
Well,
only time you get to hear about weather or anything like that is when Bryce and her friends go out to party or when she goes out to ride her scooter to escape. In the investigation, Hunt is assigned as her personal bodyguard to essentially ensure that one, she stays on the case, and two, that she doesn't get hurt conducting her investigation.
but why they don't just have him investigate it, I don't understand. He's supposed to be like the best detective or something.
Yeah, this all powerful angel of death is guarding this 20-some-year-old who's put on the task to lead this case.
Yeah. I want to talk about the drop and the government taking their magic to run the city.
Slightly dystopian, in my opinion.
Like, if they're so weak, what is the government taking their magic for? Like, do they, how much, I don't, okay, so they're so advanced, right? Are they only advanced because they take the magic from the first light?
It might be a control mechanism to keep people from like having these powerful lash outs that you kind of saw in some other books where an outburst from a fae could literally level a city. So maybe it's a control factor.
Yeah, but surely it wouldn't take so much.
I don't know.
I don't know either. Because they're only allowed to be in there for 6 minutes. And then we also took note, like I did, that they just casually have slaves. And then there's like people that don't have slaves, and everyone just is like, well, they were rebels.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. In such a modern city, it's not something that you see a lot. Like in a modern day city, you wouldn't see
slaves.
slaves like that. And people just casually have them, like all the sprites, they're all slaves to somebody. And I
Yeah,
just think that's wild. I don't know. Let's talk about Rune for a second. So I had written down as a note that Rune, Dannon, and Co. are giving frat house.
definitely giving frat house party vibes.
Like he's supposed to be he's like the prince, right? He's the crown prince. He's the leader of the super powerful auxiliary group. But then he goes home with his two buddies, who the one guy is conveniently a government hacker. Like he doesn't work for the government. He hacks them.
Rune doesn't seem to really want to fulfill his role as a royal, and even though he's like living this frat boy life off in his apartment or his house somewhere in the city, his father is still bankrolling his little escapades. So
Rune gives just that rich kid at college who's just like, I don't care. I'll do my job at a minimum, only because I am kind of a nice guy, but I don't want people to know. But meanwhile, I'm just gonna be loaded up on drugs, partying every night with my buds
yeah,
in
uh,
my like rundown shack of a house.
but his friends are familiar with Bryce, but they know
They
her as his cousin.
cousin,
Yeah,
yeah,
because
and
she
Bryce,
goes to seek advice from him
and they're like,
to
"Oh, your
to
cousin."
figure out more information about the case.
Yeah, I mean, what a secret to keep. But he's giving frat house. I really want to know about his mom. I don't. Is she dead? They don't say.
They
You think
Rune's mother is alive.
Rune's mother's alive,
Yeah,
but there's no relationship with
no,
her.
there's no relationship with her because they discuss her when Rune goes to meet with the Autumn King. She basically lives her like quiet,
She had her
quiet
kid,
little life
and
as like a rich royal person, just living in a house.
yeah, like she did her duty. She was chosen for her bloodline. She had Rune, and they were like, "Thanks, bye."
Yep.
And now she's just living. But she didn't go back to Avalon, did she?
No, I think
No.
she lives somewhere in Five Roses.
Yeah. Okay. Uh,
But Hunt, Athalar, and Rune Dannon hate each other's guts.
yeah, they don't get along. The shifters are in the house of Earth and Blood, so the wolves, okay? But in the house of Sky and Breath are the angels and the Fae.
So they're in the same
No,
house?
they're in a different. Yeah, so the angels and the Fae are in the same house, but they are not in the same house as humans and shifters. rewind all the way back to these houses because I skipped this page, so I was so confused. But we have here that the House of Earth and Blood is includes people that were some that were chosen by Luna, and then the House of Sky and Breath has some favored by Luna. And I feel like that wording is super specific.
But
What is
again, we don't know
yeah,
because we don't know who any of
we
those
don't know
people
anything.
are.
But chosen by Luna and favored by Luna. Don't you think that's something?
It could be. I'd have to like.
Who is Luna? She's the goddess,
I don't know.
right?
It doesn't say.
That they worship.
It doesn't say. Again,
Um,
massive info dump, no context. Figure it out.
yeah.
Welcome to the party.
That Nicholas just flicked his eyebrows at me. So then that's pretty much all the way up through chapter 17. And then chapter 17, we have Bryce, who is now kind of casually investigating. What does she get out of the investigation? I don't remember. What did they promise her?
They didn't. I don't think they
Or
promised
they're just like,
anything. They forced her into it because not only one was she a suspect, but two, Micah said that she was the only qualified person
so
because
like they don't offer her anything
no,
to solve this crime.
they chose her because she was the only one who happened to be
She was like
with
eyewitness.
both victims
Oh
the night
yeah,
they died.
yeah, that's true. And we still haven't heard from Fury.
No, haven't heard from her.
Where you go, girl? So in chapter 17, where we're leaving off, is Bryce sneaks out of her apartment and gets on a little scooter and just like I imagine a Vespa, right? Like I
Right.
imagine her getting sneaking out of her apartment, getting on a Vespa with a stupid ass little helmet, and then like down to the bone, not the bone quarter, to the
Well, first she goes to Rune's house, and that's where she finds out that the Viper Queen
Viper Queen. That's where she's
might
going.
be involved in this murder somehow. So then she goes from Rune's house and then goes to the meat market.
To the meat market to see the Viper Queen.
But she like snuck out in the night.
But she thinks she's so sneaky. Like, girl, you think that you are gonna sneak out of your apartment, which you know is being watched. Okay, you know you're being watched. You think you're gonna sneak past the freaking Umbra Mortis and just get on your scooter and bebop down to the meat market?
Right.
Like,
So
girl, what?
so the scene ends with her walking through the meat market, and then
Him confronting her.
yeah, he confronts her. He's like, "I'm gonna kill you." Like, what are you doing? Because like she keeps making all these decisions on her own in the investigation and not cluing him in. And so he's basically tailing her around, trying to figure out what's going on. When in reality, she's actually advancing.
She's
the
actually
case.
investigating it though. But she's kind of proving their point that like she can make more gains on this investigation than they could.
Yeah.
But I think that's just because they're not looking at the case correctly. Like they're being stupid about it. Like, no, think of where she's getting all her clues, okay? She's literally going in and talking to the women of the case, and they didn't even do that. They were like, because she goes to the nail salon, and he's like, "What are you doing at the nail salon?" And she's like, "I'm literally interviewing your victim's girlfriend." And they're like, "Oh, wait, what?" Like, they didn't even have that thought. Like, they thought it was just a nail salon. They're so silly.
Yeah.
You got three dudes, right? You got all these dudes and then Bryce. Okay, you got Rune and his two buddies who are just partying it up. Then you've got freaking Micah, a man,
And Isaiah.
and then you got Isaiah and Hunt. Okay, all of these people could not solve the crime of the century. And then you got Bryce, who's making strides because she is going to the nail salon.
It's pretty funny.
It's just like, come on. It seems very like men are dumb in this city.
She does call them alpha holes
Awful
at some
holes.
point.
Bryce is very sassy.
Yeah, I don't know if
What
I
do you
like
think? What do you think about her?
it. There's points in this story so far where I'm like, she's okay, and then she just like does something completely rude and ignorant, and I'm like, ugh. But then in the same breath, like she doesn't necessarily have the most ideal life. So I don't know. I guess her friends did die. I guess she has the right to be a little sassy.
Because your friends are dead.
I mean, they were murdered.
Yeah, but if your friends are if your friends are dead, does that give you an excuse to go and be rude and mean to other people?
Maybe when you're leading the investigation that people failed to do.
Yeah.
I don't know.
See, I'm gonna reserve my feelings for Bryce because I've read all the books, so I have a very strong feeling on her, uh, overall, and I don't wanna skew the opinion, but I know that in this point, like she's just very sassy. Some of the stuff that she does, I think, is quite funny. Like her trying to sneak out past the freaking Umber Mortis and then getting on a scooter in the middle of the night. Like, girl, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? That's not gonna work. What do you think about anyone else? Like, who's your favorite character so far?
Favorite character so far? I kind of like Hunt. I think he's funny.
You like what?
I think Hunt
You
is
like
funny.
why? What's so funny about him?
He is just like so dedicated to doing his job that like he obviously wants to do it in a way that's like easier for him, but like isn't okay with just embracing the suck and doing his job. Like him
I mean, what? But also
standing on the roof across from her apartment in the rain, just staring.
he's also a literal slave. He literally can't say no.
Yeah, I guess you can't say no. I don't know. I find him funny.
He's an actual slave. Like he can't just say, I'm not into this. I don't want to do this. I mean, I do think he's funny because they bounce between the point of views, right?
I think so.
What do you mean you think so?
I don't remember. I've just been reading it. I don't.
I know that they do eventually. They definitely do
Yeah,
when
yeah,
they introduce him. And I love that. I love that in books nowadays, the bouncing of the point of views, but because you get that inner thought of those characters. And I just think some of them are so funny.
yeah.
I think Rune is interesting. He's not giving very much right now,
Yeah, you don't learn too much about him just yet.
but I think Hunt is funny. I just want to know more about everybody and less about the politics because I don't understand that. I just want to know more about them. But of course, we're only on page 200 now, so there's like 600 more to go,
Mm-hmm.
and then two more books.
Right.
These books are so long.
Yeah, long, long books.
Yeah, I think our thoughts overall was we were very, very confused.
Confused, but intrigued to see what happens.
Confused and intrigued. I mean, I feel like so much has happened, yet nothing at the same time. But
A lot of ground covered, but again, not
but
quite.
what? But what? And the timeline that really threw me.
Yeah.
Like first 5 chapters, and then boom, 2 years later, and then where are we at in this investigation at this point? Is it a week? Is it days? Is it 2 days? I don't know.
Yeah, no idea.
600 pages to go.
So chapters 1 through 17,
Complete.
Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood.
Yep. And so next is the next 200 pages, and that'll be the next episode.
All right, all right. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Next week.
Reading Russet's Book Club. Bye-bye. Just let's continue.
You're killing me. You're killing me.